On a freezing winter evening, Warren Pierce sat in his remote Alaskan cabin, enjoying the warmth of his fireplace and the quiet solitude that came with living in the wilderness. The wind howled outside, rattling the wooden walls of his home. Just as he was about to turn in for the night, a strange sound caught his attention. A faint scratching at his door, accompanied by soft, desperate whines. Curious yet cautious, he approached the frosted window and peered outside. His breath hitched as he caught sight of two wolves standing at his doorstep. Their once majestic coats were now ragged, dusted with snow, and their ribs protruded beneath their fur. Instead of snarling or baring their fangs, they trembled in the cold, their luminous eyes pleading for shelter. Warren hesitated. Common sense dictated that inviting wild predators into his home was an absurd idea. Wolves were powerful, unpredictable creatures. But these animals did not radiate menace, only desperation. A battle waged within him, fear against compassion. Finally, his heart won. Taking a deep breath, Warren cracked the door open, gripping his flashlight tightly. One of the wolves, the smaller of the two, took a hesitant step forward, its movements unsteady. Its eyes held no aggression, only a silent plea for help. Against every instinct screaming at him to turn them away, Warren made a decision that would change his life forever. He stepped back and opened the door wider. The wolves hesitated for only a moment before cautiously padding inside. As they crossed the threshold, a shudder passed through their bodies, as if they were finally releasing the tension they had carried for miles in the merciless cold. The warmth of the cabin wrapped around them, and for the first time Warren saw them for what they truly were. Not fearsome predators, but creatures on the brink of survival. The smaller wolf, marked by a gray patch on its back, limped slightly, favoring its hind leg. The larger one bore a scar across its muzzle, a silent testament to battles endured in the unforgiving wild. Despite their weakened state, there was an undeniable grace in the way they moved, a quiet dignity that fascinated him. Moving carefully, Warren added another log to the fire. The crackling flames cast flickering shadows across the walls, and the wolves seemed mesmerized by the warmth. One of them let out a soft whimper as it edged closer, perhaps experiencing such comfort for the first time in its life. Realizing they must be starving, Warren rummaged through his pantry and retrieved some raw meat. Setting it down a safe distance away, he stepped back and watched. The smaller wolf approached first, sniffing hesitantly before taking a bite. The larger one followed, and within moments, they devoured the food. As they ate, Warren couldn't help but feel a pang of sympathy. How long had it been since they had last eaten? The wilderness was ruthless, especially in the depths of winter. Hunger, cold, and exhaustion had stripped them of their natural wariness toward humans, replacing it with sheer desperation. Once fed, the wolves began to relax. Their tense postures softened, their eyes no longer filled with unease but something else, a quiet trust. Warren, still keeping a respectful distance, settled into his chair by the fireplace. The three of them sat in a silent understanding, bound by an unspoken truce forged in necessity. As the night deepened, Warren prepared a makeshift bedding area near the warmest corner of the cabin. He laid out blankets, uncertain if the wolves would accept his offering. But to his surprise, they curled up, noses tucked under their tails. It was a sight both strange and humbling. Wild creatures seeking comfort in a human's home. Before retiring, for the night, Warren double-checked the locks on his doors and windows, not because he feared the wolves, but because he realized that tonight they were no longer threats. They were guests. Morning came faster than expected. As sunlight streamed through the frosted glass, Warren stirred from his sleep. His first thought was of the wolves. Had they left? Had he made a mistake? He quickly checked the living area. To his relief, they were still there, awake, yet calm. Their eyes met his, and in them, he saw something he never expected. Gratitude. But something else caught his attention. The smaller wolf's limp had worsened. Concerned, Warren cautiously approached, kneeling beside it. He extended his hand slowly, allowing the animal to decide whether to accept or reject his help. To his surprise, the wolf remained still, watching him with weary yet trusting eyes. Gently, Warren examined the injured leg. The wolf flinched but did not pull away. The wound, though not fresh, was inflamed, likely aggravated by the cold and travel. Warren knew he wasn't a veterinarian, but he also knew he couldn't do nothing. With careful movements, he retrieved his first aid kit. The larger wolf tensed, its amber eyes locked onto him, but Warren spoke in a calm, steady voice. "I'm just trying to help." He wasn't sure if they understood words, but they seemed to understand intent. The injured wolf let out a low whimper but allowed him to proceed. Warren worked quickly, cleaning and wrapping the wound with a light bandage. As he did, a strange realization settled over him. This was no longer just an encounter with wild animals. It was something deeper, an unspoken bond, a moment of trust that neither man nor beast had expected. As Warren sat back and observed the wolves resting peacefully in his home, he wondered what fate had brought them to his door. And more importantly, what would happen when the time came for them to return to the wild. He had taken them in, but the real question lingered in his mind. Had he saved them, or had they, in some unexpected way, saved him? "It's for the best," Warren finally said, though the words felt heavy in his chest. Kara gave him a small nod of understanding. "We'll make sure they're taken care of," she assured him. Warren turned to the wolves. The smaller one, despite its injury, had settled into a quiet trust with him. The larger one remained protective, its golden eyes watching Warren as if sensing the change that was about to happen. Kara moved carefully, producing a small tranquilizer dart, not to harm, just to ease the transition. "This will keep her calm for transport," she explained. Warren swallowed hard, feeling a strange ache in his chest as he watched. The wolves had become more than just visitors. They were a connection to something deeper, something he hadn't realized he was missing. As Kara administered the sedative, the smaller wolf blinked drowsily, her body relaxing into the warmth of the blankets Warren had provided. The larger wolf let out a low whine, nuzzling its sibling protectively. Warren reached out, hesitating for only a moment before running a hand over the larger wolf's fur. "You took care of her all this time," he murmured. "You're a good brother." The wolf let out a quiet exhale, almost as if acknowledging his words. Kara and Warren worked together to prepare them for the journey. As she carefully lifted the smaller wolf into a secure transport carrier, the larger one hesitated before stepping in on its own, choosing to stay by its sibling's side. At the doorway, Kara turned to Warren. "You're welcome to visit the center," she offered. "Not many people would have done what you did." Warren gave a small nod, but he wasn't sure if he would. He watched as she carried them outside, their presence in his cabin now just a memory. The morning light had grown brighter, casting long shadows over the snow-covered ground. As Kara's vehicle disappeared into the distance, Warren stood at his doorstep, hands deep in his coat pockets, staring at the fading tire tracks. The cabin suddenly felt emptier. With a sigh, he turned back inside, stoking the fire and settling into his chair. His fingers brushed over the blanket where the wolves had rested, their warmth still lingering. Maybe, just maybe, he'd visit after all. The frigid air inside Warren's cabin was thick with tension as he watched Kara examine the injured wolf. Her gentle but firm touch reassured both Warren and the anxious animal. "They're wild creatures," she said softly. "Once they recover, they need to return to their pack. It's where they belong." Warren felt a deep conflict stir within. A part of him wanted to keep them safe under his care, shielding them from the dangers of the wilderness. Yet he knew the truth. Real survival meant setting them free. He took a steady breath, offering Kara a small nod. "Do what needs to be done. I'll help however I can." Kara's presence shifted the energy in the cabin. The wolves, though wary, seemed to recognize her scent as familiar and non-threatening. For Warren, she was an unexpected answer to a problem he hadn't known how to solve. how to aid these creatures without compromising their wild instincts. She set her gear down in the corner and crouched beside the smaller wolf, carefully inspecting its bandaged leg. Her brow furrowed. "It's not infected, but it needs proper treatment at our facility. You did a good job with what you had." A sense of relief washed over Warren. He had done what he could, and it had been enough. Now, the larger wolf let out a low whine, eyes locked onto its injured companion. "They form strong family bonds," Kara murmured. "He won't leave her side." Warren had already noticed that. Over the past nights, the larger wolf had shielded the smaller one, sharing its warmth through the storm. As night fell, Warren suggested they stay one more night before moving the wolves. Kara agreed, emphasizing the importance of keeping their stress levels low. "I have a snowmobile," Warren said. "It can help us get to your team faster." Kara's eyes lit up. "That's perfect. My truck's parked a few miles out, but the snow's too deep to reach here." They spent the next hour planning. At dawn, Kara would radio her team, ensuring they were ready to receive the wolves. It seemed straightforward, but Warren knew the wilderness rarely cooperated with human plans. The fire crackled, casting a golden glow across the cabin. The wolves now rested side by side, their breathing steady. Kara watched them, a tender expression on her face. "I've tracked them for months. They used to be part of a pack of 6, but we lost their signals in a blizzard. I feared the worst." Warren stirred the embers. "It's a miracle they survived. Wolves are social. Losing their pack can be a death sentence, especially for an injured one." Their conversation shifted to lighter topics: her work, his life in isolation, the brutal realities of the wilderness. Outside, the wind had stilled, leaving behind an eerie silence. Every now and then, the wolves let out soft sighs, a reminder of the fragile trust they had placed in him. Before turning in, Warren laid out food. Kara, observing, noted how comfortable the wolves were around him. "It's incredible," she said. "Most wolves would never come this close to a human, but they trust you." Warren flushed. "I couldn't leave them to freeze. They needed you," Kara said gently. "And maybe you needed them too." As the night deepened, the wind picked up once more, howling around the cabin. Warren and Kara woke intermittently to check on the wolves, but despite the storm, they slept soundly. By morning, the sky was pale with dawn. Kara stretched, pulling out her radio. "I'll check in with my team." Stepping outside, she braved the icy air to find a clearer signal. Inside, Warren brewed coffee, the rich aroma filling the space. The smaller wolf stirred, its injured leg looking slightly better. Kara returned moments later, her expression mixed with relief and urgency. "They're sending help. We need to get to a rendezvous point near a frozen creek about 3 miles from here." Warren nodded. "Let's pack up." They prepared a sled, lining it with blankets for the injured wolf. The larger wolf hesitated, but eventually climbed in, nestling close to its sibling. Warren opened the cabin door to a world of glistening white. The cold bit at his skin as he helped Kara guide the wolves outside. Once secured, Warren revved the snowmobile. The engine's roar broke the morning silence as they sped across the frozen expanse. The wolves huddled together, trusting them for now, but Warren knew this was only part of the journey, for the wolves and maybe for himself as well. As they glided across the frozen expanse, Warren couldn't help but admire the stark beauty of the landscape, vast, silent, and untouched. But with every passing moment, the dark clouds edged closer, casting an ominous shadow over the distant peaks. Halfway across the creek, their radio crackled to life. "Kara, this is Dan," came a muffled voice. "We're approaching from the east, but the storm is moving in faster than expected. If it hits before we reach you, you might have to take cover." Kara exchanged a concerned glance with Warren. "Copy that, Dan," she responded. "We're crossing the creek now. Should reach the other side soon. Where exactly will you be?" "Look for a red marker on a pine tree." Dan's voice crackled through the static. "We've set up a temporary shelter." "There." As if on cue, the wind began to howl, sweeping gusts of snow across the ice. Visibility dropped, and Warren tightened his grip on the snowmobile's handles, fighting to keep it steady. The wolves in the sled sensed the change, letting out anxious whines. The smaller one whimpered, shivering from either cold or fear, perhaps both. Kara placed a reassuring hand on Warren's shoulder. "Just a little further," she urged. "We'll find that marker." At last, through the swirling snow, Warren spotted a faint splash of red on a tall pine. Relief flooded him as he steered the snowmobile toward it. Beneath the tree, a makeshift shelter stood partially erected. Two figures, bundled in heavy winter gear, struggled to secure a tarp against the relentless wind. A small fire flickered nearby, its glow barely piercing the storm. Kara waved, and the figures turned, raising their arms in greeting. As the snowmobile came to a halt, Warren killed the engine, and Kara jumped off, calling out over the wind. "We found them," she gestured toward the sled. "They're weak but stable. The smaller one has a leg injury." Dan, a tall man with a salt and pepper beard, gave a grim nod. "Let's get them inside." His companion, a short woman named Nina, rushed forward, spreading thick blankets inside the shelter. "This storm is about to hit hard," she warned. Carefully, they coaxed the wolves out of the sled. The larger wolf growled low as Dan approached, but Kara's soothing presence helped keep it calm. The smaller one, shaking from exhaustion, allowed Nina to guide it onto the blankets. As the wind howled outside, the team worked quickly to secure their camp. Dan reinforced the tarp, while Nina prepared medical supplies, bandages, sedatives, anything they might need. Warren, now on the sidelines, felt a mix of relief and something else, a strange sense of loss. For days, he had cared for these wolves, forming an unspoken bond. Now in the hands of experts, they no longer needed him. Kara seemed to sense his unease. "We'll make sure they get the best care," she promised. "And when they're ready, we'll discuss their release. Maybe you could even be there." Warren managed a small, grateful smile. "I'd like that." The wind roared outside, rattling the shelter. But within their small refuge, warmth spread, not just from the fire, but from the shared determination to save these wild creatures. The storm grew fiercer as the night wore on. Ice crystals swirled outside, forming an eerie dance in the darkness. Inside, the injured wolf lay curled on the blankets, its breathing steady. The larger wolf remained alert, watching the humans with wary eyes, protective of its sibling. "We have to wait this out before we move them," Kara said. "Traveling in this storm would be too dangerous for them and us." Warren nodded, though worry flickered in his eyes. Their shelter was makeshift, their supplies limited. "How long do these storms usually last?" he asked Dan, who was securing a flapping tarp. "Could be a few hours. Could be all night," Dan replied grimly. "Alaskan weather is unpredictable." With no other option, they worked to fortify their shelter. Warren helped Nina stack snow around the perimeter for insulation, while Dan and Kara reinforced the tarp. The wolves watched intently, silent witnesses to the humans' efforts. Between tasks, Warren found himself reflecting on how surreal it all was. Just days ago, he had been alone, enduring the harsh wilderness and solitude. Now he was part of a team, fighting for the survival of two wild creatures that had, in an unexpected way, become part of his life. As the storm peaked, they huddled close to the fire, taking turns keeping watch. The wolves rested, the smaller, one sedated, while the larger remained ever vigilant. Warren reached out, tentatively stroking its thick fur. To his surprise, it didn't flinch. If anything, it leaned slightly into his touch. "You're one brave soul," Warren murmured. "Both of you are." The night stretched on, the wind howling in the darkness. Sleep came in brief, restless moments. At some point, Warren noticed the larger wolf pacing restlessly, nudging its sibling with soft whines. Even in the wild, even in the face of danger, its loyalty remained unwavering. It was a reminder. These creatures, so often misunderstood, were more than just predators. They were family, bound by instincts of care and protection. By the time dawn arrived, the storm had passed. A profound silence settled over the land, broken only by the distant cawing of birds. Snowdrifts glistened in the pale morning light. Kara's radio crackled. "Dan, Nina, do you copy? The storm has cleared. How's your location?" She paused, listening. Warren couldn't hear the response, but he saw her shoulders tense. Turning to him, she spoke, her voice tinged with urgency. "We're not out of the woods yet." Dan spoke in, a low voice reporting that although the weather had improved, a new problem had emerged. The road leading to the wildlife center was blocked by fallen branches and ice. Clearing it would take hours, maybe even a full day. Warren exhaled, feeling the weight of the situation. "So, we're stuck here for a while. The wolves can't travel safely on foot, not with one injured. And if the main roads are blocked, the snowmobile won't get us there." Kara nodded. "We have to stay put until Dan and Nina clear the path. Taking an alternate route isn't an option. The deep snow would only stress the wolves further." Despite the setback, the group remained determined. They stoked the fire, checked on the wolves, and discussed how best to manage the weight. The larger wolf paced anxiously, sniffing the cold air outside as if searching for something. The smaller one rested half-conscious from the sedative, still in visible pain. At one point, Warren turned to Kara. "Do you think they sense their pack nearby? Or are they just uneasy?" She considered his question. Wolves have a powerful instinct for tracking their pack. They could be sensing a distant scent or familiar territory. But after the storm, any scent trails could be lost. The hours dragged on. Unaccustomed to inactivity, Warren volunteered to scout for more firewood. Kara agreed but cautioned him. "Stay within sight of the shelter. The snow is deep, and if the weather turns again, we don't want to lose you." Bundling up, Warren ventured a short distance away. The fresh snow-covered landscape was both breathtaking and treacherous. Every step sank knee-deep, forcing him to conserve energy. Still, he managed to gather enough fallen branches to keep the fire going through another night. As he made his way back, something caught his attention. Faint tracks leading away from the creek's bank. Too large for a rabbit, too small for a moose. His heart quickened. Could they be wolf tracks? If so, were they from the ones they had rescued or another wolf entirely? Curiosity pushed him forward. The tracks were uneven, as if left by an injured animal. Was it another wounded member of the same pack? The thought fueled his sense of urgency. A sudden gust of wind lifted the surface snow, momentarily blinding him. He realized he had strayed farther than intended. The shelter was out of sight. Orienting himself by a crooked pine tree, he turned to head back, only to catch movement in the corner of his eye. A flash of gray fur among the trees. His breath caught. Another wolf. Carefully, Warren set down the wood, not wanting to appear threatening. "Hey there," he murmured, knowing how strange it sounded to greet a wild animal, but something told him this wolf might be connected to the ones they were sheltering. The wolf lingered behind a bare birch tree, its thin muzzle and tall ears barely visible. Its coat was patchy, its frame gaunt. It was in bad shape, but its weary eyes remained locked onto Warren. He held still, maintaining a calm stance. Minutes passed in a silent standoff. Finally, the wolf took a tentative step forward. Up close, its frailty was even more evident, its ribs showing, fur matted with ice. It wasn't submission that kept its head low, but sheer exhaustion. Compassion stirred within Warren. How many wolves were barely surviving in this brutal winter? If this one was part of the same pack, reuniting them could mean survival. Then suddenly the wolf growled, a low, warning rumble. Warren stiffened, raising his hands in a non-threatening manner. "Easy." But the wolf wasn't looking at him. Its gaze was fixed on something behind him. A cold wave of unease ran through Warren as he risked a glance over his shoulder. Snow-covered branches, the tracks he had left. Nothing else. The wolf's growl deepened. Then, with surprising agility, it bolted into the trees. A chill unrelated to the weather settled over Warren. What had spooked it? Grabbing the wood, he hurried back to the shelter, his mind racing. When he arrived, Kara noticed the troubled look on his face. "Everything okay?" He explained what had happened. Kara listened intently, her expression growing serious. Another lone wolf, injured, starving. It could be part of the same pack or a rogue. Either way, it's risky to follow it alone. Warren nodded. I couldn't just ignore it, though. It looked desperate. I know, she said softly, placing a reassuring hand on his shoulder. But we need to focus on the ones here first. Once they're stable, maybe we can investigate. We can't risk ourselves or them. Hours passed as they tended to the wolves and kept the fire going. Dan and Nina reported slow progress in clearing the road. Yet Warren's thoughts kept drifting, back to the third wolf. Was it truly alone? Or was it looking for something? Someone? The two wolves in the shelter showed signs of improvement. The smaller one, though in pain, could shift positions. Its sibling remained protective, occasionally licking the bandaged wound as if offering comfort. Near dusk, Dan's voice crackled over the radio. Good news. We've got a partial opening on the road. If we push hard, we might clear a path for a vehicle by morning. Think you can hold out until then? Relief flooded Warren. Kara responded. We're good here, Dan. The wolves are stable. Just get here as soon as you can. Warren turned to the animals, running his fingers through the larger wolf's thick fur. Just hold on, he murmured. Help's coming. That sense of relief was short-lived. As the sky darkened to a deep violet, the larger wolf's ears twitched. Then suddenly it stood, its fur bristling. The smaller wolf let out a questioning whimper. Kara picked up her binoculars, scanning the tree line. There's movement out there. Can't tell if it's a person or an animal. A knot of dread coiled in Warren's stomach. Could be the lone wolf I saw. Before anyone could respond, the larger wolf barked sharply, stepping toward the shelter's exit despite its limp. Warren moved to block its path. Easy, he said. We can't have you running off. The wolf growled, not in aggression, but in distress. It looked at its injured sibling, then at Warren as if caught between duty and caution. Then the radio crackled again. Urgent update. Dan's voice came through. We've spotted another wolf near the road. Looks weak, but it's headed your way. Warren's pulse quickened. That has to be it, the third wolf. Kara exchanged a look with him. We can't let it suffer out there, but we also can't leave these two. I'll go, Warren said, surprising even himself. You stay here. That wolf could be part of their pack. Kara hesitated, then sighed. All right, but keep your radio on. If anything happens, call us. Within minutes, Warren was bundled up and ready. He checked his snowmobile, enough fuel for a short trip. The wolves watched him, the smaller one letting out a soft whine as he patted its fur. I'll be back, he promised. As he revved the engine, the larger wolf threw its head back and howled, a long, haunting sound that echoed through the snowy wilderness. Warren shivered, both from the cold and the weight of what lay ahead. Hang tight, he murmured, steering into the deepening twilight. The vast frozen wilderness stretched endlessly before Warren, the snow-covered terrain illuminated by the pale glow of his flashlight. Guided by faint footprints and distant landmarks, he navigated the treacherous path toward the clearing where Dan had last reported signs of the lone wolf. The roar of his snowmobile's engine felt intrusive against the eerie silence of the wild. As he neared a stand of spruce trees, he killed the engine, the sudden stillness amplifying the soft rustling of the wind through the branches. Then, movement, a shadow stirring against the white backdrop. Warren's breath caught as he spotted the frail figure of a wolf emerging from behind a tree. Its ribs protruded sharply, and a slight limp betrayed its weakened state. The animal let out a faint growl as he approached, but there was no strength behind the sound. I'm not here to hurt you, Warren murmured, his voice calm and steady. The wolf's hollow eyes met his, filled with a mix of exhaustion and wariness. It was the same desperate look he had seen in the other two wolves he had rescued. But this one looked even closer to the brink of survival. From behind a tree, another figure emerged. Dan, his rifle slung over his shoulder. Easy, he cautioned. We don't want it to bolt. Warren nodded, relieved to have backup. He knelt in the snow, stretching out his hand in a silent offering of peace. The wolf hesitated, its nostrils flaring as it caught Warren's scent. For a brief moment, the world seemed to pause, the snow falling around them, the distant howl of the wind, the shared gaze between man and beast. Then, as if surrendering to fate, the wolf collapsed onto its haunches. A wave of pity surged through Warren. He pulled a thick blanket from his pack, draping it gently over the creature. "You're all right," he whispered. "We'll get you back to your family." Dan scanned the surrounding trees. "We should move quickly. If this is part of the same pack, it might be the missing piece we've been looking for." Together, they lifted the wolf onto a sled. Despite its size, it was alarmingly light. Starvation had taken its toll. The animal let out a weak whimper but made no attempt to resist. Securing the sled, Dan took the lead, towing it behind his snowmobile while Warren followed closely. The journey back was tense, the night air thick with unspoken worries. Would the other wolves recognize this one? Would the pack accept their lost member, or had too much time passed? By the time they reached the shelter, dusk had painted the sky in shades of lavender and gold. Kara rushed out to meet them, eyes wide with disbelief. "You found it?" Warren nodded. "Barely hanging on, but yeah." Inside, the two injured wolves stirred. The larger one's ears perked up, letting out a sharp bark. The smaller wolf, still recovering, lifted its head in confusion. Kara positioned herself cautiously between them and the newcomer as Warren, and Dan unwrapped the blanket. The wolves tensed, their bodies rigid with uncertainty. Then something extraordinary happened. The third wolf, though weak, let out a soft whine, one of recognition, of longing. The larger wolf stepped forward, sniffing tentatively before its posture shifted from caution to understanding. The smaller wolf, despite its injuries, let out a whimper, struggling to rise. In an instant, all three wolves were locked in a silent exchange, their bodies speaking in ways no human could fully understand. "They know each other," Kara whispered in awe. "Look at the way they're greeting each other. No snarling, no signs of aggression. This is their pack." Warren swallowed hard, emotion tightening his throat. Watching these creatures reunite, after who knew how long apart, was nothing short of humbling. The third wolf, still fragile, nuzzled the smaller one gently as if reassuring it. The larger wolf hovered protectively, ensuring everything remained peaceful. Slowly they settled together, curled up in a heap of warmth and silent relief. A crackle from Kara's radio broke the moment. Dan's voice came through, urgent. "Road's clear enough for a truck. We'll be there in 20 minutes." Everyone moved into action. The wolves needed safe transport, and with their family now complete, the mission had taken on an even deeper significance. Kara prepared sedatives in case the wolves panicked. Warren helped load them into sturdy crates, his heart heavy despite the knowledge that this was for their own good. The wolves, though wary, did not fight. Even through the mesh of their crates, they kept their eyes on each other, a silent promise that they would not be separated again. Under the glow of headlights, Warren stood with Kara as Dan secured the crates. The snow sparkled beneath their feet, the cold night air wrapping around them like an unseen observer. "You're welcome to visit them," Kara said. "Once they've healed, we'll release them back into the wild." Warren nodded. "I'd like that," he admitted. "I need to see them free." Kara smiled. "I think they'd like that too." As the truck rumbled to life and disappeared into the darkness, Warren felt a tear slip down his cheek. A mix of relief, gratitude, and something unspoken. A farewell, perhaps. He knew this was the right thing, yet he couldn't shake the weight of their absence. In the days that followed, the silence of the Alaskan wilderness felt different. It was no longer lonely, but peaceful. Warren found himself looking toward the horizon, remembering the bond he had witnessed, the desperation, the trust, the reunion. True to her word, Kara sent updates, photos of the wolves recovering, playing, in the snow healing together. The third wolf, once on the edge of death, was gaining strength, its spirit no longer broken, and one day they would be free again. As Warren chopped wood by his cabin, he found himself smiling. He kept an extra blanket near the hearth, just in case. Because kindness, he had learned, had a way of finding its way back to those who offered it, in ways both seen and unseen. If this story touched your heart, let us know in the comments. Have you ever witnessed a moment between human and wild that changed the way you see the world? Share your thoughts below, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more stories that remind us of the connections we share across species, across landscapes, and across the wild beating heart of nature itself.